So the next session that we're going to, we've got Anjali Nelson. So Anjali, if you're happy to share your slides. So Anjali's going to be talking to us about the Greencollar Nature Plus credits, and so we'll be exploring her experience as a corporate with their crediting system that's aimed at making incremental change in biodiversity. Anjali is the General Manager of New Initiatives at Greencollar, and she leads the development of Greencollar's work in biodiversity, plastics, water, and international carbon markets. Anjali has over 15 years of experience in environmental markets with a focus on nature-based solutions to climate change. She's led the development of UN award-winning projects and authored publications and methodologies relating to nature-based solutions. Anjali is a co-author of the Nature Plus Standard, launched in 2022 to drive investment into biodiversity schemes and outcomes across Australia and internationally. So thanks so much, Anjali.
That was a mouthful. Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Yep, Anjali or Ange will do. I am going from the wet tropics down to Wurundjeri country and the Ngarrindjeri Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders who live on this country, and I feel very fortunate to be in this part of the world. And hello to everyone, and thanks for this opportunity. So I'm going to talk through with you Nature Plus today. Just very briefly, if you're not familiar with Greencollar, Greencollar's been around in Australia for 16 or so years, and really our value, our purpose is to drive investment into environmental outcomes at scale and to support resource managers, land managers, in receiving those income flows, diversifying what they're able to do on their properties to drive investment into nature. We have definitely been a big player in the carbon space, but our main goal is conservation and conservation outcomes. So as much as we are project developers and proponents, we are also market builders and creators. And so, yes, carbon and plastics. So we have the first plastics project in Australia, and that's an international program, and further ones in Africa. You've heard about our work in water through the reef market work with eco markets, which has been an incredible learning experience and continues to be a really exciting market for us. And today's focus is on Nature Plus. We have over 200 environmental markets projects, primarily in Australia, but expanding internationally at the moment. And now I can't move my slide. Give me a sec. There we go. All right. So we launched Nature Plus, as Rachel said, in 2022, but really it's been on our agenda for quite a number of years, and we've been collecting data specifically around biodiversity across our projects portfolio for a good 5-6 years prior to that, in some cases even longer, really with a view of understanding better when we look at landscapes beyond biomass and carbon, what does this mean? And really great slide from Marie around those activities and thinking about the broader impacts of what land and resource managers do on their properties, and how do we understand those better. So Nature Plus fundamentally is 1 credit equals a hectare of active restoration or conservation of a habitat or species. We use something called the ECOND, Environmental Condition Index. You've already heard from Bronwyn about AFN. AFN is a pretty core component of what we do in Nature Plus. Accounting for Nature being based up in Queensland, in Brisbane. And they've created something called the ECOND, which is an index that goes from 0 to 100 and can score the condition of what they'll call an environmental asset, but you could look at a ecosystem, you could look at a specific species, and they'll score that from a condition of 0 to 100. So 0 being completely degraded state, 100 being its remnant pre-cleared condition. And that gives us a common language to look at a range of different ecosystems, a range of different species, and understand what the condition is on a project. The idea for us is to really work with projects to establish a starting condition, reapply a method to get a different point in time, so a different score in time once activities have been implemented, see what that increase is, and then be able to generate credits to demonstrate those outcomes. So have that audited and assured, as you've heard from is standard in these markets, to demonstrate those outcomes. So a Nature Plus credit is a hectare times by the amount of uplift, so the increase in the econ score over that monitoring period. What we really want to do is drive projects through a period of restoration until they reach what we call a conservation threshold. And after that, they can continue to receive credits for the ongoing maintenance and conservation. And so as long as they can maintain the condition of that environmental asset over time, they can continue to credit. So two kind of key documents or processes here is the AFN framework, which, similar to how Marie was describing for eco markets, looks at certifying methods, understanding methods, getting those peer reviewed and assessed. And so the AFN framework provides the independent framework around what methods can be applied. If they meet a confidence level 1 or 2, then they are eligible to operate under the Nature Plus standard. And the Nature Plus standard looks more at those core elements to environmental credits. So the permanence, additionality, leakage, how long can a project go for, how do you create a unit, all of those elements. So what we were trying to create here really is an overarching framework standard that can convert environmental outcomes into a unit, but we are far from the experts in all habitats and species and regions, and we understand that these things are highly complex. Just as biodiversity is highly diverse, so are the localized solutions and the localized needs and the localized knowledge. So for us, that's a critical element of Nature Plus, is to provide the framework but allow methods to be developed wherever, internationally, Australia, marine, terrestrial, really to access the support of local expertise to build those methods and to work in partnership. And here's just a small snapshot of how varied some of those conversations are already at the moment, looking at crown of thorns removals and coral reef health, to looking at financing invasive species in other parts of the world. How do we look at koala habitats and corridors? And so it can be quite a broad range, and obviously a key skill set within the NRM sector. And as Bronwyn was explaining, the knowledge of terrain after so many years of working in a specific region and understanding that specific region is particularly nuanced. And so really important that local knowledge, local expertise is utilized, and we don't try and create a kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all approach to how we address the biodiversity crisis. Just another quick element around this, as broad as those methods are, we also want to drive investment into the areas that are most significant and where that's really needed. So Nature Plus has a tiering system for credits. So where a project has mapped areas that overlap national or international environmental significance or biodiversity significance, they're a tier 1. Tier 2 is where it's mapped for state significance, and tier 3 is where it has not yet been mapped for any significance. The idea there is really to try and have a price indicator to drive into areas that really have high significance for biodiversity where it's really needed. I'll skip through that. I kind of explained that already. Might be more interesting to talk through some of our initial projects. So 3 of our projects that are going to be issuing in this financial year. 2 are in Western New South Wales in the Marlborough region, which we understand is has some of the lowest levels of protection. Those projects, we're looking at changed livestock practices in the monitoring period, looking at changing the kind of livestock and the grazing practices. And as I'll show in a minute, the Nature Plus provides, through those environmental accounts, a more detailed map of the property and the project area, and looks at areas that are more vulnerable than others and where scores are higher for certain condition indicators than others. And so the land managers can then have more data-driven feed budgets, think more deeply about not think more deeply, they actually generally know, but have that scientific backing to say, I'm doing this and this is having this impact for biomass, and for the quality and the condition of the vegetation on my property. So that's for those two first projects. The Paru project looked a lot at fencing sensitive riparian areas as a nature refuge, and did that during the project period. The Culloden project is in Queensland, Brigalow Belt, Burnett Mary region, and that's really looking at increasing water points, understanding the impact of cool burns, and getting some of that, again, that scientific data fed back to the landholders, in these cases farmers, to understand, or to get a different perspective or a different view, and feedback and information on what they're doing on their farms, and help inform them going forward, and also to help finance and drive finance into some of those things that they're really keen to do, but they need that diversified income to enable them to do that. To give you a little bit more of a kind of insight into some of that data and science that sits behind it, under the Accounting for Nature method, all these projects develop environmental accounts, and there's something called an information statement that sits behind that. It's publicly available on the AFN website, so you're welcome to dive in and have a look at those. But some of the key components of those information statements, so I've put up here the reference benchmark for one of the projects, and it gives you an idea of some of the indicators we were looking at specifically for native vegetation. If you were looking at something around koalas or something around birds, those indicators would obviously be different. And so then also on the second table down below, the project is divided up into assessment units, which look, in this case, at the vegetation ecological communities that are on the property, and score how they've changed over time. So as you can see on this property, it had a 2.4 econ increase over the project period. And for the farmer, so where there's lots of numbers and science that's behind it, there's also a key element of what we do is the environmental asset adaptive management strategy. A big long word, I realize. The idea is to sit down with the farmers or with our land managers, map out the property so that it makes sense for them. You might have differing management strategies across the property. So in this case, it was two, based on where the floodplain was and what additional activities might be needed within particularly sensitive areas. Identifying the management objectives for that period, trigger conditions. So where do we see something that happens that's possibly a risk or not great for the condition and the environment? What corrective actions do we take, and how do we monitor that through time? The idea is that at the end of every monitoring period, we can come back and go, all right, well, the land manager undertook these activities, this was the outcome, this is what they think now from what they've seen from the scores, where they'd like to make additional investment, where they'd like to change management practices going forward. So the idea is to give more information, and for land managers and resource managers to have that input into how they would like to engage with Nature Plus going forward. What excites us especially is where we can look at a landscape level for this. And so this is the Currawinya KBA. Sorry, there's a lot of colours going on here, but you can see the Paru floodplain is in the light blue. We've got protected areas, national parks, reserves sitting in the upper riparian area and further down south. The orange areas are existing crediting Nature Plus projects. The yellow areas are ones that are under development, and the areas that are on the sort of diagonal stripes are existing carbon projects. What we see here is the information that we can gain through doing the environmental accounts on those existing properties, the EAMS, understanding what land management activities have delivered what outcomes. All the lessons that we're learning can contribute to a landscape level approach. The opportunity to create corridors, the opportunity to collaborate with other organisations operating in that area and really see where we can create that landscape level impact is something we're really excited about. So that's what we're attempting in various states at the moment with our testing and validation phase. These are our first 20 pilot projects. At the moment, we've got more like 24. But really, where can we double down on learning that we're gaining from these pilots and these testing and validation projects to inform something at that more regional or landscape level? How are we engaging with Landcare and RMs? Obviously, really important partners for us. It's early days in this market. We are really still testing and learning, understanding local realities, and anywhere where we can get support on locally relevant methods is hugely valuable to us. At this stage, as we said, it's quite nascent. We're working with our buyers and different corporate partners to understand how they want to interact with the biodiversity market, what's important to them. What we're crucially looking for are some of those key relationships that can be built within industries, within regions. So I've put some examples there of, textiles manufacturers and wool producers. How can we bring these together and use Nature Plus as a way to direct finance through sustainable supply chains? Same with beef and textile leather and cattle farmers. So just some of those sorts of examples, and understanding NRMs are really well placed within their regions to understand some of those dynamics and where those systems are in place and where we could have really big local impact, as well as send some really important global messages around how corporates can meaningfully engage in their nature-related risk and deliver outcomes where it matters most for their businesses, but also really understand local impact and local need. That's the long and short of it. I'll refer to pollination again on our website. You'll see there are quite a few reports that we commissioned last year around the state of biodiversity markets. Some of the slides that Marie showed, please feel free to dive in. It's got a bit of an interesting understanding of what's happening. Australia is definitely leading the charge in many ways. We're seeing a few more standards pop up coming out of Europe, South America, the UK, but lots of interesting stuff happening in our region and in Australia in particular. So it's a really interesting, dynamic and exciting time. So thank you very much for your time.